Today we're going to be talking about what the Bengals may or may not be doing in the 2022 draft, starting tonight and going through this weekend. Going to talk about some possibilities, briefly kind of go over a few of the names that are kind of being thrown around as possibilities. Also going to talk about some off-the-wall potentials. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Way of the Dad podcast, where we fearlessly dive into the depths of dadness. If you like what you are hearing, please share the podcast and give it a review on the platform where you listen. Thank you. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Way of the Dad podcast. Glad to have you here. Been a little bit since I put up a new episode. And, well, let's just say life stepped in. Nothing terrible or anything like that, but I got real busy. Projects around the house, other commitments. We recently took a weekend vacation to Chicago. First time I've ever been there. Which is hilarious considering I live in the Midwest, and I've only ever drove through Chicago a handful of times. Never stopped, though. I have to say, we had a really good time. Took an architectural boat tour of the Chicago River, which was really cool to learn how the lock system worked, and see some of the buildings there and kind of learn a little bit about them and, why they're built the way they're built. Things of that nature. Got to see the gigantic silver bean, or the really big metal jelly bean. That was kind of cool. Definitely a tourist trappy type thing, but hey, pictures were taken, boxes were checked. And of course, while we were there, we had authentic Chicago-style pizza. And it was quite good, actually. So I apologize for the delay. I'm going to try to be trying to get back to being consistent on a Monday type of release. I'm also looking at some alternative ways for me to record. Right now, the problem is I'm just really busy once I get home from work. I'm going to try to record some podcasts when I'm doing my best thinking, though. And that's usually when I'm in the car. I drive. I do home health physical therapy for my day job, which means I drive a lot. And I may try to record while I'm on the road. I don't know how that's going to turn out. I'm sure the audio quality will not be quite as good. But I'm hoping I can at least make it acceptable and see where it goes. I don't know how organized these will be. I don't know if they'll be more ranty. I tend to be a little off the cuff to begin with, but this would be something else. I don't know how they'll go. Maybe they'll go over really well. But I'm going to try a few of these out, see how they go, see if I like them, if they kind of work for me. Because, of course, as with everything, there's, of course, the amount of time it takes to record a podcast. Then there's the amount of time that it takes to edit it. And I'm trying not to be a super duper perfectionist, but I'm also trying to not be totally lazy with it either. And I'm trying to strike my balance there because it is a time crunch. So I'm going to try a couple of those things out. I did buy I think it's called a lavalier microphone. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But it's like a lapel microphone. And it's something I can clip on and record as I'm driving. Don't know how I just don't know how the sound quality is going to turn out on this. We'll see. Thankfully, I did not, break the bank for this microphone. I did buy one that's respectable, but not extremely expensive. If I like this a lot, then, of course, maybe I'll invest a little more in it down the road. But I'm going to try that. And I plan on getting a gimbal mount for my phone so that I can start doing some, maybe like documenting some of the projects I do around the house, things like that. We shall see. I definitely try to plan. I'm planning on putting together a little bit of a studio, because right now I record in my garage, which is definitely not the best place to record. I have Amazon Air flying over my house God knows how many times at least once every 5 to 7 minutes, it seems like. And then I have lots of geese and ducks because there's a pond very close to me. And they just love to sing their songs for what seems like an eternity sometimes. Cars going up and down the road. So I am going to try to put together a studio where I can record a little more consistently and in a little more peace and quiet. So anyway, that's that's getting caught up on the business of the podcast, or the state of the podcast, if that's what you want to call it. But let's get down to the episode. I am excited for the draft. As I record this, it is obviously Wednesday night, not Thursday morning when you'll hear it. But I am excited about it. But not as much as I have been in years past, because, of course, when you have a high draft pick, I think the excitement level's a little higher, because you're looking for that pick to come in and change the fortunes of your team. Past 2 years have been pretty awesome in the draft pick department. I mean, you've got Joe Burrow, talk about changing the fortunes of your team. I think mission accomplished. And then you've got Jamar Chase, which it just took that to a whole nother level. But this year we're picking at 31. So, the likelihood of finding a bona fide all-pro 10-year player who's going to lock down that position as a starter for, a decade or something. I'm not saying that don't happen. Of course they do. It's so hard to lock down who that's going to be when you're talking about drafting at the bottom of the first round. And the other problem is in years past, we kind of knew who they were going to draft, especially, 2 years ago. It was almost a foregone conclusion that it was going to be Joe Burrow. I know there was a little talk. Joe wasn't going to come to Cincinnati. He was going to do a Eli Manning holdout hostage demand thing, whatever. Nobody really believed it here. And so when they picked him, it was pretty obvious. It was just, yeah, that's who we thought. Okay, great. Last year, when it came down to Penei Sewell versus Jamar Chase, leading up about the last week of the draft, I think we all kind of figured it was probably going to be Jamar Chase. The connections were too strong between him and Joe, and it just seemed like it was the easy, obvious fit. Whereas Penei Sewell meant that, okay, we already saying that Jonah Williams is a bust already, even though he looked decent. So, I sketched out some draft possibilities. I'm not going to lie to you. It is so hard. I have tried to keep track of every name bandied about. The problem is at 31, there's just too many possibilities of who's going to be there. So we'll hit some overview, some of the common names. But, I mean, it's a literal crapshoot I'm not even going to bother trying to predict who they're going to draft. I'm going to talk more about what I think they're looking at. One of the most obvious positions they're going to look at is offensive line, which they have absolutely crushed this year. God love it. Oh, I mean, watching them in free agency this year, it's like, is this how good teams? Is this like fans of good teams get to feel this way? Because this is different. Last couple of years have been good in free agency, but nothing like this. This year has been phenomenal. So, but still, the potential Question being left guard. Is it going to be Jackson Carman? But then they talk about like they're looking at him at tackle. But then who is he going to replace? Jonah Williams? I mean, I'm not going to lie. Jonah Williams is not looking like he's going to be Andrew Whitworth or Anthony Munoz or anything like that. But he doesn't look like he's not a liability. And so I don't know that I believe them on this. I think they're going to let the draft determine what they're doing with Jackson Carman, Deontay Smith, and Trey Hill. I think they're also going to let the draft determine what they're going to do with Ted Karras. I think they have him penciled in as their day one starter at center. But if a guy like Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa is there, I think they are going to draft him. Or they're going to consider it. The problem is pick one name out of each one of these groups and they could theoretically all be there at 31. None of these are mutually exclusive of each other. And that's the problem. If Tyler Linderbaum is there, I think they're going to look really hard at him. A couple other people they could look at is Kenyon Green, a guard out of Texas A&M. And of course, big popular name, Zion Johnson, who is, I'm assuming he's a flexible offensive lineman. They have him listed as OL. I don't know if that means a guard tackle or a tackle, or I don't know if that means a guard / tackle or a guard / center. But he's out of Boston College. So those could be interesting names. Of course, another position they're going to be looking at is cornerback. They re-signed Eli Apple and Trey Flowers, which I was thrilled when they announced they finally re-signed Trey Flowers. He was absolute money on some of the best tight ends in the game in the playoffs. I mean, his stats against those tight ends were phenomenal. So I would like to see what they can do with him. I'd like to see what they have in store for him. Is he going to be the starting CB2? Or is that going to be Eli Apple? Or are they going to draft someone like Booth out of Auburn, Elam out of Florida, Kyler Gordon out of Washington? Is that what they're planning on doing there? If those are available, are they planning on drafting and day one starter to go? It's hard to say. Got another question. We got the Bates question. Bates is currently franchise tagged. Do they draft insurance for him? Do they already kind of know that Bates doesn't want to be extended here, or do they already know they don't want to extend Bates here? Again, these are things that, if those are conversations going on inside of the building, they're doing a good job keeping the leaks to a minimum. But a Hill out of Michigan or Lewis Cine, I don't know, Cine, out of Georgia. I guess those are two that look like possibilities. So, I don't know what they're going to do about that. Are they going to let Bates play on the tag? Will he play on the tag? Are they going to draft a replacement and then trade him? Are they going to trade him draft day for a pick? It's really hard to tell. I doubt they're going to trade him, but I think he wants more money than what they think the safety market deserves right now. Safety is not the big money position right now that it has been at times in the past. Cornerback's where it's at from a defensive back perspective. Then, of course, they could go defensive line. They lost Larry Ogunjobi. They did bring back Josh Tupou. They brought, they obviously re-signed BJ Hill, definitely with more money, so he's obviously probably going to be more featured. But they might try to draft someone that could replace that Larry Ogunjobi type. I've heard Travis Jones out of UConn, George Karlaftis out of Purdue. Of course, he's more of a defensive end, but I guess they talk about how he could flip in. And then as a defensive end, David Ojabo out of Michigan, the one who got injured. But do they really and we're talking first round here. If that dude's still available in the second round, I can totally understand why they would take him at second round, knowing they won't see him until the following year, until 2023. Tight end, honestly, there's so many names, and there's too many potentials of who could still be there. Someone they perceive as a top 10 to top 15 pick, and he drops all the way to 31 because of just the teams that are drafting what they actually need. But I think they could look at a tight end, although I think they'll look later. I don't think they're going to look super early for a tight end unless just an absolute jewel falls into their lap. I just don't see that. Then there's the other potentials. Is someone falling that they really covet down into the 20s that should have been gone like 8 through 15, and they're now dropping down into the 20s? I'm not even going to talk about Sauce Gardner. Don't even bother with me. Everything I've heard, he is most likely going to be gone before we even get to double digits. But what if there is someone who's dropping unexpectedly, mostly not because of them, but because the teams that are drafting don't actually need that kind of player? And you have a sweetheart type of pick dropping, a wildest dreams type situation here. Drops into the mid-20s. Do the Bengals jump to get him? Because the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak. 31 to say, 25. Do they package something up? Do they package Bates and something to go get something that they want? And I'm going to use Bates as an obvious one because of his uncertain status after a year. But it could be somebody else. The other way. Do they trade down? If they trade in the first round, I would say I think they're going to trade down. I think that they're going to because the other thing you got to think about is, okay, so I don't know if you remember a few years ago, the Ravens traded back up. They'd already used their first round, their true first round pick on, I can't remember who at this point. They traded back up into the first round at 32 to get Lamar Jackson. And everybody says, well, why did you do that? Well, what was the point? They were already right there second day. I don't know where they were at, but I vaguely remember they were going to be drafting fairly early in round 2 because of some other pick they had. So why make the jump a handful of spots to get someone at the end of the first day? The reason why is because every first-round pick has a fifth-year option. And when it comes to quarterbacks, you really want to have that control because that gives you a little bit longer room, a little bit more time to not only determine, hey, is this the guy, but also to determine how you're going to pay them and try to structure a deal at the right time when the quarterback market's maybe better, gives you a little bit more flexibility. So I think there's a possibility that they could be potential suitors to trade out of the first round, stockpile some second-round picks, third-round picks, fourth-round picks, something like that, right? And let someone else trade up who maybe wants to pick up, I don't know, say Desmond Ridder at the end of the first round. And so I think that's a possibility. I don't know that that's going to happen, obviously. But if you asked me whether I thought they'd be more likely to trade up or trade down, I'd definitely tell you trade down. They have a history of trading down. Seems to be their MO sometimes when they want to stockpile picks. And they like stockpiling picks. So they can get more linemen, D linemen, O linemen, whatever, value picks. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm really excited about the draft. But it's a different type of excitement because I think they've done a really good job in free agency where they are not drafting from some kind of position of extreme need, massive gaping hole, critical type spot. They're drafting with a level of flexibility and comfort where they can sit there at 31, and if they just want to sit there and wait until 31, they can sit there and wait. And maybe they have a handful of people they're hoping they're going to be there at 31. And then once that gets there, they can look at who's left and decide, who they're going to pick to bolster depth. Cornerback is probably the most obvious place of need because you've got two guys who they only got 1 year left. I mean, they're 1 year deals, Flowers and Apple. And not really the guys, as far as I can tell, that you want starting hardcore. And if you do start them for a year, then that's fine. You start them for a year, but you're obviously not thinking of keeping them for the long term. So you got to be looking for a long-term option. So anyway, it should be fun. I'll probably do another episode after the draft. I'm not going to do a recap of day one because God knows if they're even going to draft in the first round or if they're going to trade out. But I'll try to do a podcast, kind of the aftermath of the entire draft, kind of go over what I think they're doing here. And then there's a dark horse spot that they could draft too, by the way, punter. Everybody talks about Matt Araiza like he's the only good punter in the history of college football or something. But I think there's a possibility they draft a punter because of the uncertain status of Huber, and don't know if Chrisman is any good. And it's hard to say because right now there's a lot of unknowns with the Bengals at the position for punter. Drew Chrisman is the only one that's listed right now on the actual roster. And I don't know, is Kevin Huber retiring? Is he just waiting? Are they going to wait to re-sign him after the draft if they don't get someone? I don't know. Don't know what's going on there. Just looked, and he's not listed. So that's a little odd. But anyway, so that's how I'm going to wrap it up. I'll be back definitely talking about what they do in the draft. But I thought it'd be cool to talk about a little bit of the possibilities of the likely places they're looking for. It's hard to say who they're looking for because there's just too many names, too many possibilities, which quite frankly is a good thing. It's really good that it's not obvious what they're going to do and who they're going to take. And then we'll try to get some podcasts recorded in the car, see how that goes. And I'd love your feedback on them once I get those going. I got a microphone coming in the next couple days. Try to record a couple, maybe quick hits type things. See what they sound like and what you think. So that'll do it for now. Until next time, take care and have a great day. Thanks for listening. The Way of the Dad podcast is produced and recorded by, well, me, a stunningly average husband and father, who appreciates all of the likes, shares, reviews, and support you give. If you would like to reach out, you can find the podcast on its Facebook page, and of course you can email me at wayofthe.dadpodcast@gmail.com. Come back next time as we continue to fearlessly dive into the depths of dadness.